Just as the election comes into the home stretch, your polling but basically stays the same. A slight little bit of a drop, but roughly stays the same. What caused the drop in that sort of home stretch there, do you think?
One of the challenges I had was I wanted to focus on the things that were going on in people's lives. The doubling of housing costs, the rising crime rate, the inflation crisis, and my solutions to all of those problems. But a lot of that was swept off of the conversation because everyone was focused suddenly on the tariffs and the president.
The president saying that he was going to take Canada as a state, but also him saying that he was going to apply tariffs.
That's right. And those tariffs are still in place.
Why did that impact you and help Mark Carney?
That's a good question. I think it allowed the conversation to move away from the domestic record of the government and on to external factors. And that always helps the incumbent and hurts the challenger.
How was this emotionally?
Oh, it was a roller coaster. And it was like things were changing so fast and moving so quickly. In the moment, it's like you don't really have time to feel anything. You're just doing so much so quickly that your emotions, they're put on delay until after it's all over.
So after it's all over, I've got this wonderful photo of that.
Yes.
Of you and your family. You said the emotions came after because you were going.
Yes. So my leadership started in 2022 as we were coming out of COVID. And there were so many people who placed so much hope in me, who had suffered so much. They would tell me they felt like they lost control of their lives and that they vested hope in me. So I'd get young people who'd say, you have to win because I want to start a family and I can't start a family in this economy. Or mothers would say, we just can't afford food anymore. Or police officers say, I've arrested the same guy 4 times this week and he keeps getting released. You have to win to fix these problems. It's not about you, Mr. Poilievre. It's about the stuff that's happening in our lives, and you have to fix it. You know, I had a lady come to one of my rallies because when you vote to choose a leader of a party, you have to pay $15 to join the party. And she came up and told me about her life story, and then she went up to the membership desk and said, can I borrow $8? And they said, what do you need it for? She said, well, I only have $7. And they said, oh, well, there's a bank machine downstairs. You can go get some more cash. And she says, I don't have a bank card. And they said, well, perhaps could you go to your car and get some money? She said, well, I don't have any money in my car. What about your home? Because we're not allowed to buy them under the rules for other people. And she said, I don't have a home. I live in my car. And the $7 is all the money I own. And I'm spending it on a membership so that I can vote for Mr. Poilievre because he is my only hope. This is the only chance I have. So I wanted to deliver for these people. And when we didn't win, I felt terrible that I hadn't delivered for them.
What does that look like? The disappointment of not delivering for people the night of election, the day after. If I'm watching you as a fly on the wall, what do I see?
You know, I didn't spend a lot of time on that. I just got back at it. Because at the end of the day, you have to focus on what you can control. And my approach in life is to zero in on what is in your control. That is the greatest thing you can do for your mental health and for your output as a person. I believe in a stoic approach. So I didn't spend a lot of time sort of rolling around on the ground in melancholy.
Do you think that if Trump hadn't have said the thing about taking Canada and he hadn't have done the tariffs, you would be leading Canada right now?
We'll never know. I mean, these are the kinds of things you speculate about. But at the end of the day, what good does it do to speculate? And I also don't like to make excuses. I like to say, look, if this person hadn't done X, then I would be in charge. I have to own my result, and that's what I do.
As someone that doesn't know a ton about this stuff, I'm asking kind of for me. I find it interesting to see how consequential these, what do they call them? Not butterfly effect, or it's just how the unexpected dominoes can fall and change the course of history. So if Trump hadn't have said those things, if we were to speculate, do you think it would have changed the outcome of the election?
I don't know, because we don't know what would have happened in absent of that.
If you had to bet your house.
I don't have to bet my house. So
an outcome either way.
I don't want to blame someone else for the outcome of the election, because at the end of the day, the people voted and they made their decision, and I have to be at peace with it. So I can't spend my time thinking on what ifs, because if that what if hadn't happened, then there might have been another what if. So I have to focus on what I can control.
Dealing with those moments, you mentioned Stoicism. I found this book, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which I think was quite formative for how you see things in some respects, and generally Stoicism.
Yes, it's a great book. The amazing thing about it is it's so readable. Like he talks about, this is just a random page, but it's a very interesting excerpt. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But if you go on and read it, what it basically says is expect these things, and if you do, but don't be controlled by them. These are factors outside of your control. Put all of your emphasis on the things that are within your control, and it will bring a tremendous amount of peace. Because when you are focused on what you can control, you're the boss of your life, and that's what Stoicism has done for me.
I heard you say you're not acted upon.
That's right. When you focus on what you can control, you are the actor rather than the acted upon. If you spend a lot of your time thinking about the things you cannot control, then you become a helpless victim. Whereas if you focus on what you can, then you become like the driver of the car. You decide where it goes. And as my favorite poem says, Invictus, that Nelson Mandela used to read himself when he was in prison for all those years in South Africa. He would recite to himself the poem Invictus to remind him that he could focus on what he was in control of, which was his own soul. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul, is how it ends. And that gives you a lot of peace.
One of the things you often find in Stoicism and other sort of teachings of that time is this idea of being flexibly minded, in terms of being able to learn and being growth-minded and being able to evolve. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, as you went on that campaign trail, and generally over the last 10 years of your career, it's clear to me that your core principles have been quite consistent. Mm-hmm. I have this this document you wrote when you were, I think, 20 years old, which was part of a contest where you won $10,000.
That's right.
For explaining what you would do if you were Prime Minister. If you were leading Canada.
You even dug up the check.
I found the check. It wasn't cashed. No, it's a fake, it's a fake check.
We'll go have lunch.
So you won $10,000 for submitting this.
Yes.
When you were 20 years old, explaining what you would do if you ever became the Prime Minister.
Yes.
And I would like you to actually just read the opening 3 paragraphs, because it does, it is quite interesting to see how you've evolved, if at all. Could you just read those first 3 paragraphs and give me any other of the context which I might have excluded?
Sure. Although we Canadians seldom recognize it, the most important guardian of our living standards is freedom. Freedom to earn a living and share the fruits of our labor with loved ones. The freedom to build personal prosperity through risk-taking and strong work ethic. The freedom of thought and speech. The freedom to make personal choices, and the collective freedom of citizens to govern their own affairs democratically. Government's job is to constantly find ways to remove itself from obstructing such freedoms. Human beings are graced with the gifts of creativity, wisdom, and ingenuity. The best way for a society to go about improving its living standards is to allow citizens to apply these qualities to the challenges of everyday life. Asking a prime minister to single-handedly improve the living standards of 30 million of the world's brightest is about as realistic as asking him to take to an Olympic sprinting track to help a lineup of world-class athletes reach the finish line. The more the government becomes involved in the race, the greater the number of hurdles competitors will encounter. Therefore, as Prime Minister, what I would do to improve living standards is not as nearly as important as what I would not do. As Prime Minister, I would relinquish to citizens as much of my social, political, and economic control as possible, leaving people to cultivate their own personal prosperity and to govern their own affairs as directly as possible.
In the last decade, since you've been out on the road more, speaking to people, campaigning, where have your views evolved?
I would say my temperament has matured. 10 years ago, I did not have a wife and kids. As a father, you end up having to grow in a tremendous amount of patience because kids don't do what they're told, or they have needs that must supersede your own. You're constantly making compromises with a spouse in order to juggle all of the difficulties of family life. And that necessarily spills over into your political approach. I think temperamentally I've changed. I'm much more careful and thoughtful than I was, say, in my late 20s and early 30s.
The people that have, opposition parties have often referred to you as Trump light.
And what do they base that on?
I guess because you're both conservatives, I guess that would be much of the argument. And you both have spoken out against this term wokeism and DEI.
Yeah, look, on DEI, and I don't think that is something particular to President Trump. I mean, there's a lot of people around the world who, for their own reasons and based on their own experiences, have criticized that particular ideology. What I think has changed is that liberals used to believe in liberty and conservatives believed in conserving it. You know, they used to say liberals were the gas pedal, conservatives were the brake, but we were both heading in generally the same direction. But what I think happened with wokeism is that it is a deeply illiberal ideology. It is liberalism, traditional liberalism was a colorblind ideology. It was based on total equality, regardless of gender, sexuality, race, or anything else. Wokeism is exactly the opposite of that. It like accentuates all of those differences and disagreements. It groups people based on what should be irrelevant characteristics like race and gender. And then having divided people into groups, it seeks to expand state control over their lives. What I believe in is treating people as individuals and letting them live their own lives, judging them exclusively on their own merits. And I think that was the consensus view of both liberals and conservatives up until this toxic ideology came along and divided people.
One of the things I'm a black man. Mm-hmm. I moved from Botswana when I was a baby and came to the UK, and thank God there was sort of social systems in place, because I don't think that I would have had the outcomes I'd had. One of the things that I did know, though, when I was 18, dropped out of university and started to get into the world of business, is I was aware, because when you look at like funding data for entrepreneurs that are black or especially women, it's clear that there's like a systemic disadvantage of some sort. And I wonder, someone like yourself who's against this sort of DEI ideology, how do you contend with like systemic institutional discrimination towards certain groups, which does pose objectively real disadvantage on them being able to climb the ladder? Because you said something earlier about your goal being in Canada to make sure everybody like has a fair shot.
That's right.
How does one counteract the systemic issues around race or gender or whatever it might be that stop that being possible? Because I find myself in an interesting position where, like, on one end, I'm like, I want to be treated like everybody else.
Right.
And I've always felt that way. And I've always actually, to some degree, cringed a little bit when I felt like someone was giving me special treatment because my skin color was different, because it in some way made me feel like I was at a disadvantage, which I know can become quite self-fulfilling. However, on the other side of the spectrum, I do also believe that there is like systemic discrimination that is going to hold certain groups back if there isn't something done to level that playing field. So,
look, I think the answer is equality. There has to be strict equality and equal treatment regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, religion. And that is the ideal to which we were all striving. And I think if we get back to that, then we can give everybody a chance to achieve based on their own merit. What we need is a meritocracy that is colorblind and judges people based on what they can do. People aren't colorblind, though, are they? No. I think my dad said to me when I was younger, he said, everybody's prejudiced. I remember sitting in the back of the car. My dad's white. and I'm thinking, my dad just said that he thinks everyone might be racist and everyone's prejudiced. I'm like, oh, is my dad racist? But as I've gotten older, I realized that he, to some degree, is telling the truth, that prejudice is part of how we survived as humans and we're able to understand danger from not. So prejudice is something that I think is very prevalent in society, whether we
believe we're not and everyone else is. So if prejudice is very prevalent in society, does there need to be measures that counteract that to give everybody a fair chance?
Our institutions have to be conscious about making sure that we are judging people based on their merit. And they should work aggressively to make sure that that everyone, regardless of where they come from, their background, has a chance to succeed, get the job, get the promotion, move up the ladder. I don't think that is achieved by breaking people down into more and more different groups and divisions, by trying to build the barriers between people based on race and gender. I think it's by actually removing them. So the problem I have with wokeism is it seems almost designed to divide people. And that is exactly the opposite of the objective that we all sought when we pushed for racial equality and personal freedom and responsibility.
How does one contend with the systemic issues, though, the prejudices? I remember reading about studies where, like, if they got a bunch of people and got them to apply for jobs, and just based on the names, whether they were like a typically white name versus, say, a typically black name, the response rate is markedly different.
Well, I go back to my first principles. I think that government is responsible for a lot of the barriers that are put in place. So let me give you some examples. When government brings into place these anti-housing policies that I described, they impact far more on minorities and disadvantaged people than they do on established people, obviously, because if you're new to a country or you come from a poorer background, you won't have a house. And then you're the one who's going to pay the biggest price for the fact that government is making housing unaffordable. If you think at the occupational licensing rules that I just described that block immigrants from working in their professions even when they're thoroughly qualified, those are government-imposed obstacles that prevent people from getting ahead. Also, a lot of these soft on crime policies have been sold to us on the grounds that they're going to help minorities by ensuring that we don't have as high a conviction rate. Well, what they've actually done is that in many minority communities where the law-abiding people are now suffering as a result of criminals of all backgrounds. And so, ironically, it's actually government policies that are causing people of disadvantaged backgrounds to suffer even more. So wokeism accentuates all of those problems rather than solving them. So I'm interested in solving problems to give everybody the opportunity to live a safe, affordable, opportunity-filled life. And wokeism is not doing that. Creating a free market, free enterprise economy with free people who have free speech, that's the single best way to give people of all racial backgrounds a better chance in life.
Again, I'm holding the position of the DEI to try and I like the clash of ideas because it helps me to think through these things. I've never had the chance to ask somebody these kind of questions before. And on that point of housing, one of the things that I found to be quite surprising was that black mortgage applicants are up to 200% more likely to be denied a home loan than white applicants with the similar financial profile.
This is in Canada?
These stats are for the West. So,
okay.
But what is going on there? Because it says that they have similar financial profiles. Yet their applications are being denied up to 200% more than white home buyers.
So I had not seen that data point before, but I would say that these sound like really stupid bankers because they're making a bad decision to deny people a mortgage and ultimately deny themselves the business. If that's how they're making their judgments.
And then DEI comes in to make sure that their judgments aren't stupid.
Well, I'm not sure that DEI cures stupidity, though. In some cases, we've seen it cause more.
But that's how it shows up, right? It's like a logical next step, which is there's prejudice going on in the system, which is making it unequal for some groups. And DEI becomes this corrective measure so those stupid bankers don't make stupid decisions.
But DEI has been in place now for several decades, and how is it working? You're reading the statistics to show that it's not. So maybe it's not actually doing what it's designed to do. Maybe it's doing other things.
The other thing that I actually was really keen to talk about, and I've just realized is is this.
Oh, that's little Valentina there. She loves to be on Daddy's shoulders.
How old is Valentina?
Valentina is 7 years old.
7 years old. And she's nonverbal?
She's nonverbal, yes.
What does nonverbal mean?
She is autistic. She's on the spectrum. So the biggest difference between Valentina and other children is the ability to communicate verbally. So we're working very hard on that. She's making some encouraging progress, but she does have some challenges in that area. She's very acrobatic and rambunctious. She loves to climb, swing, bounce, jump, and she is extremely affectionate. And one of the superpowers she has is that whatever she does 100%. She's also 100% authentic. So, and that's not the case once kids get old enough to manipulate to get what they want. They can put on acts and artifices. She doesn't do that. She's the real deal all the time. You know exactly how she feels because she indicates it. And she's very blessed to have a little brother, Cruz, who adores her and treats her better than anyone else in the world.
I often hear parents talk about their concerns with, someone like Valentina growing up in the world as nonverbal. You're not going to be here forever to protect her. And, I was saying to you before, my brother has 3 kids under the age of, 7 years old now. And I've noticed just how much he thinks about how they're going to be when he's not here. How does that relate to Valentina being nonverbal and how you think about the future?
Well, a lot of things. Like one, we obviously have to build up a nest egg for her so that if she can't earn income, she will have the resources for a great life after we're gone. And second, we're really hoping that we forge a very permanent and deep bond between her and her brother Cruz, because he will be there. And one of the things he says again and again is, my job is to protect Valentina from bad guys. So this is a good attitude, especially that they are actually in the same class. Even though she's older, she is in his class at school. And so he's daddy's eyes to protect our little princess. But I think when he's older, I believe, based on his nature, that he's going to be there for her. And we are building a plan towards that.
My job is to protect Valentina from bad guys.
That's right. It's a great instinct.
How has it changed your politics?
It's reinforced my sense of compassion for people who can't provide for themselves. And, I've talked a lot about how government should be limited. I do think there's a very real role for government to help people who genuinely cannot provide for themselves, people who suffer with disabilities being probably the best example. And it has reinforced to me that we have to also have policies that recognize the inherent worth of every individual. Too often, governments have seen people with disabilities as just someone they have to care for, but not someone who can contribute. And I believe that everybody has something to contribute and that we should try to unlock that in every human being. We don't know exactly what Valentina will do, but I believe she will do some kind of a job at some point in the future. And I'm very passionate about policies that enable people with disabilities to have work opportunities, even if it's just very limited, to design programs so that when they have for example, cash or medication support, it doesn't get robbed from them just because they get a job. So it has focused my mind a lot on people. It gives you a sense of compassionate, because when you see somebody who might be different, like I see my daughter in that person. I see my daughter, often my wife is very good at this. She'll see someone who might be acting differently in a crowd, and other people are looking at that person, and she'll grab my hand, she'll say, I think he's autistic. And then she will often go and talk to that boy and make him feel loved. So compassion is about feeling what the other person feels, and you have a greater ability to do that when there's a loved one close to you who has the experience.
An interesting range of emotions to be the father, the parent of a autistic child.
Yes.
I know this because I get messages en masse from our audience members who have an autistic child.
Yes.
What can you say to the range of emotions you feel?
My wife was able to discern that there was something different about Valentina very early on when she was still a baby, because she didn't make a lot of eye contact. And there was a period during which she was not very communicative at all, even in ways that babies normally are. There wasn't a lot of reciprocal communication to start with. So when we went for the diagnosis, we were not that shocked. So, when the I think she was a nurse or she was a specialist, gave us the diagnosis, and she was like paused, like waiting for us to burst into tears. I mean, we were just kind of like, yeah, we expected that, and let's get on with it. And then we just started doing the things that we had to do. And my message to parents of autistic children is just focus on what you can control. Get on to the things that you have to do. Get a speech therapist. Get the play structures in the house that they love. With Valentina, it's a bouncy castle and a little trampoline and a lot of building blocks, and enjoy them. Like she's so much fun. Like she's a fun little girl. She loves to jump. She's scared of nothing. If anything, the problem is she's a bit too much of a daredevil, but she's a thrilling little girl to be around. She loves to, like, you see all the pictures with her on my shoulder. She always loves to climb on my back, and she loves to run. She loves me to run with her on her shoulders. So like enjoy the special things that they bring, because they are magical. They're wonderful. They're just, they call it autism because they're in their own world. You can't force them to be in your world. You have to go into their world and reach them there, and understand that, for her, tapping on something might give her a tremendous sensation that we can't appreciate. On the other side, minor irritants that you and I would brush off might drive her completely crazy. And so if she's having a meltdown, it's not because she's a bad kid. It's because she's going through a horrific sensation that we can't quite understand. So, but you just have to embrace it all. And it's a lot of extra legwork that goes into a child that has these conditions, but it's worth it and it's rewarding in the end.
She, obviously not met her, but from all the photos, she makes you smile just looking at the photos. She
makes everyone smile, and she's very popular at school. The kids are very nice to her, by the way. Like we get secondhand reports, and it's like they love her. They're sweet to her. She has a little boy that has a crush on her, so I'm keeping an eye on that. But she's so affectionate. Like we went to a fall fair one time, and there were these little old ladies sitting there, and Valentina just decided she liked this little old lady and went and sat on her lap, like a complete stranger. But that's how she is. She decides she likes you, and you're in.
What are your closing statements? We've got listeners that are, all over the world, the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK. If you had to send one final message to them, what would that message be in this moment in time that we find ourselves in?
Well, I'm actually optimistic about the future, and I think Canada's got a very bright future. I think the world should look to Canada. We have the most resources of anyone in the world. We have probably the most diverse and educated population. We have the most fresh water, the second biggest landmass. And I think the future belongs to Canada. We're going to be an incredible place, the envy of the world. If we do the right things. I don't want to be egotistical about it, but I think it would help if I were Prime Minister as well.
I love Canada. It's one of my favorite places in the world for so many reasons. When I went to Toronto for the first time, I felt like I was at home.
Yeah.
Because I think, Brits and Canadians have a lot in common.
Absolutely.
Including a king.
Yeah. You would be very well received in Canada. So consider...
No, I love it.
Coming.
I go all the time whenever I'm invited to go, and I've been once or twice on vacation as well. So I hope to be back there soon, and I'm actually going to do a tour there at some point with the Diary of a CEO to meet all the people that listen. So very excited about that as well.
Oh, you'll bring up big crowds.
Oh,
it'll be fun.
We have a closing tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they're leaving it for. And the question left for you is, what are you most afraid of? And how do you deal with that fear?
I don't have a lot of fears. I mean, for myself, I would say going back to family, it would be that something would happen to my kids. You hear terrible things in the news. I was just, unfortunately, I had to go to a funeral for mass shooting victims in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. And I just, every parent worries about something happening to their kids. I think that would be my biggest fear.
What about for Canada at large?
The biggest fear I have for Canada is that we just keep blocking our own potential and declining, and opportunity vanishes, and slowly our people lose the promise that the country gave me and so many generations. And so my fear is that we become the frog in boiling water, and it just gets slowly warmer and warmer and warmer, and the frog really never notices.
Is that the trajectory of travel?
I think it is, unfortunately, but I think we can change that trajectory if we make some big reversals in direction.
And lastly, what about for the world, generally, the Western world?
I would say my biggest fear is that the Western world does not stay true to its foundational principles. I want the Western world to stay true to the basic principles of that grew out of the Magna Carta, of freedom, of government that is servant, people that are masters, and that the free democracies not only succeed at home but work together abroad to preserve that civilization.
Thank you so much. Thank you
sir.
for taking the time to come have this conversation with me and answering all of my questions. I don't like interviewing politicians because they are very slippery.
Right.
And they slip and slide away from answering things in a way that makes the very essence of why we started this show feel like we're not delivering for the audience who want to know the truth, whether it's ugly or indifferent or whatever it might be. And I've really enjoyed the conversation because I feel like you answered my questions to the best of your ability.
Thank you.
And that's not usually the case with politicians. And
thank you.
I think they think that's the right approach. But actually, I think in a world that's now more of a glass box than ever before, and not a black box where you can paint the image of something on the outside, being transparent and being willing to come into these environments. And your team didn't tell me anything was off limits. They didn't say there was anything I couldn't ask you.
Right.
They didn't ask to be able to edit this. And I would like more politicians